Recently, a resident of Johannesburg, Stephen Haywood, filed a complaint with the Advertising Standards Agency of South Africa against the city for a radio ad that billed Johannesburg as the African world-class city. He argued that the ad was full of false claims, notably that Johannesburg was financially stable, implementing energy-efficient infrastructure, and creating new jobs. He filed the complaint, he said, as a citizen, as an act of democracy, holding his city accountable. The complaint was upheld, and the city of Johannesburg was ordered to stop running the misleading ad. I'm intrigued by this spat. I'm an urban planner, and this thing called a world-class city is supposedly my trade. But Mr. Haywood's complaint raises the question, what defines the world-class city? Who defines the world-class city? At the start of the urban century, visions of the world-class city abound. The African world-class city, the Asian world-class city. There's a veritable cottage industry of consultants and branding agencies and rankings and advocacy groups, all concerned with the world-class city. In India, where I grew up and where I do research, every major city wants to be world-class. But what is the world-class city? Let me share a story with you. A few years ago, at a conference in Shenzhen, China, I found myself with a few other urban planners being interviewed by local reporters. They wanted us to answer only one question. Was Shenzhen a world-class city? All in their 20s, the reporters posed the question with the enthusiasm of youth, as if anticipating their own futures in a city that they earnestly hoped was world-class. Shenzhen, of course, is an interesting place. It is the world's factory hosting the assembly lines which make possible our favorite electronics. Shenzhen reminds us that that gadget we cannot live without is tied to the nimble fingers of invisible workers, in this case, the millions of rural migrants who fuel the global economy of Shenzhen. There are moments, rare moments, when these workers become visible. For example, when a British consumer, Mark, bought an iPhone and found on it the photograph that a Shenzhen worker had taken of herself. Pink and white striped uniform, beaming a smile, she is iPhone girl, making the peace sign. But Shenzhen is more than a global electronics factory. In Shenzhen, the urban revolution of the 21st century is truly underway. Everywhere there is construction, everywhere the new becomes old, everywhere fast-paced infrastructure inhabits the city. They call it Shenzhen Speed, to mark a city that has grown from 25,000 people in 1980 to 15 million people in 2012. But Shenzhen Speed also suggests that no other place in the world can produce commodities at such speed, that no other city in the world can transform itself as rapidly as Shenzhen. The philosopher Paul Virilio had once stated, "No politics is possible at the scale of the speed of light." No politics is possible at the scale of the speed of light. I returned to Virilio's words when Shenzhen's workers started committing suicide and Shenzhen became notorious for these worker deaths. Chinese workers were rebelling against the speed of light, but heartbreakingly through the politics of death. But that day in Shenzhen, the young reporters wanted the urban planners to answer only one question. Was Shenzhen a world-class city? It was January 2010, and Dubai had just unveiled the world's tallest tower, the Burj Khalifa. The 20-something reporters had an idea. Shenzhen should just build a tower taller than Dubai, and then, without a doubt, it would be world-class. What they did not consider was that downtown Dubai, home to the tower, was in fact a bankrupt project. It had been completed only because of a $10 billion bailout by the oil-rich neighboring emirate, Abu Dhabi. Indeed, when the tower opened, it was no longer called Burj Dubai. It had been renamed after Sheikh Khalifa, the ruler of Abu Dhabi. Such are the bonds of dependence and debt that make the world-class city. What do we learn from Shenzhen and Dubai? We learn that the world-class city is typically defined by spectacular architecture, those shimmering towers of glass and steel. We learn that the world-class city is always under construction, usually at the speed of light. We learn that the world-class city is fueled by the labor of invisible workers. And most of all, we learn that every world-class city is just like every other world-class city. Yes, that's a tautology, an absurd one, but it is what defines our present era of global urbanism. What I want to convey today is that it is possible to break out of this confined and monotonous current vision that is the world-class city in three ways: solidarity, visibility, and dwelling. These are ways of seeing that allow us to imagine the city 2.0. These are urban practices that allow us to build the city 2.0. If there is to be a world-class city, then this should be it. We live not only in an era of global urbanism, but also of global consumption. Our urban cosmopolitan lifestyles, especially here in the West, depend on the commodities we love. That perfect cup of coffee we need to get the morning started, or that bouquet of flowers we buy on our way to a special date. But that dependence links us in intimate ways to invisible workers on a distant continent: the coffee farmers, the coffee growers, the iPhone assemblers. To see the city from a place of dependence is to see the city as a network of human relationships, an awe-inspiring web of global interconnections. But we must do more than recognize this dependence. We must also craft bonds of solidarity. This is the work of the fair trade movement, which makes global consumers responsible for the conditions under which our favorite commodities are produced. This is the work of radical street artists like Xylo, who interrupt our daily urban routines to provoke an understanding of responsibility, reminding us of the politics of life and death that may be implicated in the commodities we consume. Indeed, consumer outrage over worker suicides led companies like Apple to partner with the Fair Labor Association to improve wages and working conditions in Shenzhen. Our shiny iPhones have fingerprints all over them, as do the shimmering towers of glass and steel of the world-class city. But those fingerprints can also spell solidarity. They can also create a common humanity. If there is to be a world-class city, then this should be it. The second intervention I want to highlight is visibility. The urban century is unfolding in the global south, in Mumbai, Johannesburg, Nairobi, Jakarta, Rio de Janeiro. The urban majority of these cities are the urban poor: the slum dwellers, the shack dwellers, the migrant workers, the day laborers, the homeless. The urban majority are usually invisible. Even worse, cities wanting to be world-class, to be just like every other world-class city, tend to expel the urban majority, literally erasing their presence from the face of the city. This is the paradox that lies at the heart of the world-class city, that it expels from its premises those who build and service it, those who raise its children, cook its meals, clean its villas and penthouses, that it declares as disposable those who are in fact essential for the world-class city. You see here satellite images of a community called Pushta on the banks of the river Yamuna in Delhi. 30 years and 150,000 residents cleared in the blink of an eye for the Commonwealth Games, which Delhi hosted a few years ago. This type of erasure is happening in city after city, as Mumbai tries to become the next Shanghai, as Rio de Janeiro gets ready to host world-class sporting events. To see the city anew is to see the urban majority. But I'm asking you to consider something much more bold today. To believe that it is the urban majority, the urban poor, who are the city makers of the 21st century. They not political or economic elites, are the creative classes of global urbanism. To see the city anew, we must learn from the politics of visibility that the urban majority are crafting. One such lesson came for me at an event in Johannesburg convened by the organization Sticky Situations, featuring young artist citizens from the township of Diepsloot. Through art, spoken word, and public performance, these township residents were speaking from the margins of the city, yet refusing to be marginalized. Art and culture are not the sole domain of the elite bastions of the world-class city, the museums, the universities, the fancy art galleries, but are in fact the democratic aspiration of the urban majority. These are the urban poets who inspire me. Dear Diepsloot, from Monday to Wednesday, you make me love you like a butterfly coming out of its cocoon. I can only have a good time then, like a cat drinking its milk, like a rabbit eating its carrots. On Thursday, my feelings change about you. You turn into a pack of angry dogs. You make me angry, like a chicken whose chicks have been taken away. Dear Diepsloot, I love you, but you break my heart. I love you, but you break my heart. If there is to be a world-class city, then this should be it. The third and final urban practice I want to highlight today is dwelling. In the urban century, humanity will dwell in cities, but the terms of such dwelling are profoundly unequal. In Mumbai, a single-family home soars 27 floors into the sky, a cantilevered sheet of glass and steel with helipads, airborne swimming pools, and hanging gardens. The 600 servants who must clean, staff, and protect this $1 billion tower live in the dense slums beneath. To see the city from the slum is to recognize this gross inequality. But to see the city anew, we must do something much more bold. We must recognize that happening right now, all around the world, are practices of dwelling that transform this inequality. This is the work of poor people's movements, which are fighting for housing justice. Here in the US, take the case of the Chicago anti-eviction campaign, which reclaims empty and foreclosed homes for the homeless. When Martha Biggs, mother of 4, was evicted from public housing, she found herself sleeping in her family's minivan. The Chicago anti-eviction campaign found shelter for her by reclaiming and fixing up a foreclosed home. In doing so, they not only created a place for Martha and her children to call home, they showed us a different way of dwelling in cities. The familiar formula of city making is grand urban development projects, gentrification schemes, expensive infrastructure, speculative financing. What poor people's movements are showing us is that cities can also be made through shelter activism, sweat equity, and the use of otherwise abandoned property. In taking over that foreclosed home for Martha, in improving it, the campaign created value for a space that was otherwise devalued and dilapidated. In doing so, they not only created a new urban future for Martha and her children, they created a new urban future for all of us. In that new future, in the words of the Chicago anti-eviction campaign, homeless people are matched with peopleless homes. The Chicago anti-eviction campaign takes its cue from poor people's movements in South Africa. Those that have been fighting for many years against evictions, for basic services, for political representation, for the right to dwell in cities. It is thus that the shack dwellers of the global South are creating templates of political action for the foreclosed suburbs of North America. This is global urbanism. If there is to be a world-class city, then this should be it. I've already told you that I'm an urban planner. I believe that it is in cities that the unfinished business of social justice lies today, the unfinished business of the freedom struggles of the 20th century. I became an urban planner because I believed that this unfinished business requires us to pledge solidarity with the city of the urban majority. And so let us return to Johannesburg one last time. I had the privilege of giving a talk at Wits University in memory of a great anti-apartheid activist, Rusty Bernstein. On the morning of the talk, I accompanied faculty and students to Kliptown, a district of Soweto on the outskirts of Johannesburg. Kliptown is site of South Africa's famed Freedom Charter, the 1955 charter which envisioned the end of apartheid and to which Rusty Bernstein, among others, was a signatory. There is now a monument in Kliptown commemorating the Freedom Charter, along with a luxury hotel, with a bar named after Rusty, along with a signature cocktail called, I kid you not, Kliptini, although Rusty's daughter tells me he rarely drank alcohol. But less than half a mile from the monument is this, the shacks of the urban majority. We were given a tour by Robert, who diligently keeps a notebook of all visitors and who generously tells the story of each humiliation, each deprivation, each eviction. I came of political age during the anti-apartheid movement. That struggle defined my generation as it defined the closing decades of the 20th century. When apartheid ended, it seemed that the dream of freedom movements, from anti-colonialism to civil rights, had been fulfilled. But we were wrong. The shacks of Kliptown tell us otherwise. This suggests that there is unfinished business. That unfinished business is all around us. But so are the movements that insist on fighting for human dignity and social justice, insist on fulfilling that dream. Today, at the start of the urban century, it is our great opportunity to join in such work.